The mountain air was cold and thin at 15,000 feet. Sarah Mitchell crouched behind a cluster of rocks, her breath forming small clouds in the darkness. She had been tracking the strike team for 3 days now, moving silently through the Afghan highlands. Her rifle rested against her shoulder, an extension of her body after 12 years in the army. Sarah was not supposed to be here. Her orders were clear: observe and report. But observation had turned into something else entirely when she discovered what this team was really doing. They were not hunting terrorists. They were hunting her unit. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah's platoon had been ambushed near the Pakistan border. 17 soldiers died in that attack. The official report blamed Taliban fighters, but Sarah knew better. The attackers had American weapons, American tactics, and American radio frequencies. Someone on the inside had sold them out. Sarah survived because she was doing what she did best. She was positioned 2 miles away on Overwatch, her scope trained on the convoy route. When the attack began, she eliminated 6 hostiles before the rest scattered into the caves. She tried calling for backup, but her radio was jammed. By the time she reached the ambush site, everyone was dead. Command pulled her back to base for debriefing. They asked the same questions over and over. What did she see? Who fired first? Why was she so far from the convoy? The questions felt wrong, like they were looking for something specific. Then her commanding officer told her to take 2 weeks leave. Go home, he said. Clear your head. Sarah did not go home. Instead, she started asking her own questions. She talked to intelligence officers, supply sergeants, anyone who might know something about that day. Most people avoided her. But one young analyst, a kid fresh from Fort Huachuca, slipped her a file when no one was looking. Inside were surveillance photos and intercepted communications. The evidence pointed to a rogue CIA unit operating outside official channels. They were running weapons to warlords and keeping the profits. Sarah's platoon had accidentally discovered one of their supply routes. The file also contained something else, a kill order. Her name was on it. That was when Sarah disappeared. She took her rifle, her gear, and headed back into the mountains. If they wanted her dead, they would have to find her first. And Sarah Mitchell was very good at not being found. Now she watched the strike team through her night vision scope. There were 5 of them, moving in a tight formation across the ridge below. They were professionals, probably former special forces. Their leader was a tall man with a beard, carrying a suppressed M4. Sarah had seen him before in one of the surveillance photos. His codename was Reaper. Reaper stopped and raised his fist. The team froze. He was studying the terrain, looking for signs of her passage. Sarah had been careful, but these men were good. They knew she was close. The question was whether they knew exactly where. Sarah's finger rested lightly on the trigger. She could take out Reaper right now, drop him before the others even knew what happened. But that would give away her position. 5 against 1 was bad odds, even for her. She needed to be smarter. The team moved forward again, spreading out as they entered a narrow pass between 2 rock formations. Sarah smiled. This was the place she had been waiting for. She had spent the previous night preparing this kill zone, placing charges at strategic points along the cliff face. She let them get halfway through the pass. Then she pressed the detonator. The explosion was massive, sending tons of rock cascading down the mountainside. The team scattered, but 2 men disappeared under the avalanche. Dust and debris filled the air, cutting visibility to nothing. Sarah was already moving. She slung her rifle across her back and climbed down from her position. Using the chaos as cover, she could hear shouting below, confused voices trying to regroup. She needed to get to higher ground before the dust settled. A bullet cracked past her head. Someone had spotted her movement. Sarah dove behind a boulder as automatic fire chewed up the rock face around her. She unslung her rifle and returned fire. 3 quick shots that forced the shooter back into cover. 2 more shooters appeared on her left flank. They were trying to pin her down while the others moved in for the kill. Sarah recognized the tactic. It was straight from the Ranger handbook. She had taught this exact maneuver to new recruits at Fort Benning. She pulled a smoke grenade from her vest and threw it down slope. Purple smoke billowed out, obscuring the area. Sarah used the cover to sprint across an open section of ground, bullets snapping through the smoke behind her. She reached a narrow crevice in the rock and squeezed through, emerging on the far side of the ridge. Below her, she could see the remaining 3 members of the team. They were exposed, standing in the open as they tried to figure out where she had gone. Sarah dropped to one knee and brought her rifle up. The scope settled on Reaper's chest. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. Everything else fell away. But she did not pull the trigger. Through the scope, she saw Reaper pull out a satellite phone. He was calling someone. Sarah needed to know who. She lowered her rifle and pulled out a small device from her pocket. It was a signal interceptor, something the young analyst had given her along with the file. She activated it and pointed the antenna toward Reaper. The device beeped softly as it locked onto the satellite signal. Numbers scrolled across the small screen. A recording indicator flashed red. Reaper was speaking urgently into the phone. Sarah could not hear the words, but she could read his body language. He was angry. The ambush had failed, and now he was explaining that failure to whoever was on the other end. The call lasted less than a minute. When it ended, Reaper threw the phone against a rock, shattering it. The team regrouped and started moving again, this time more cautiously. They were heading east, back toward their base camp. Sarah let them go. She had what she needed. The interceptor had captured the call, including the phone number Reaper had dialed. As the sun began to rise over the mountains, Sarah found a sheltered spot among the rocks. She pulled out her laptop, a ruggedized military model, and connected the interceptor. The file transferred quickly. She opened it and listened to the recording. Reaper's voice was clear despite the wind noise. "The target is still active. We lost Kowalski and Martinez. She's better than we thought. We need more men." The voice that responded made Sarah's blood run cold. She recognized it immediately. It belonged to Colonel James Brennan, her former commanding officer, the man who had ordered her to take leave, the man who had looked her in the eye and told her everything would be okay. "I don't care what it takes," Brennan said. "Mitchell knows too much. Find her and finish this. If she makes it back to friendly territory, we're all going to prison." "She's not making it easy," Reaper replied. "This woman is a ghost. Every time we think we have her, she's gone." "She's just one soldier," Brennan snapped. "You have unlimited resources. Use them." "I want confirmation by the end of the week." The call ended. Sarah sat in silence, staring at the computer screen. She had suspected Brennan was involved, but hearing his voice made it real. The man she had trusted, the man who had pinned her sharpshooter badge on her uniform, had ordered her death. Sarah closed the laptop and looked out over the mountains. The sun was fully up now, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of gold and orange. It was beautiful, peaceful, but she knew the peace would not last. Brennan would send more teams. They would keep coming until she was dead or captured. She had 2 choices. She could run, disappear into some remote corner of the world and hope they never found her. Or she could fight back, take the evidence she had gathered and bring down everyone involved. The first option was safer. The second option was right. Sarah checked her rifle and started packing her gear. She was not running. Not anymore. 17 soldiers had died because of Brennan's greed. They deserved justice. And if the army would not give it to them, then Sarah would do it herself. She had been trained to hunt enemies of her country. Now she would hunt enemies within it. The strike team thought they were hunting her, but they had it backward. Sarah Mitchell was done being prey. Now she was the hunter. The safe house was in Kabul, hidden in a maze of narrow streets in the old quarter. Sarah reached it 3 days after the mountain ambush, traveling only at night and avoiding all major roads. She had changed her appearance, cutting her hair short and wearing local clothing. To anyone watching, she looked like just another Afghan woman moving through the city. The safe house belonged to Marcus Chen, a former Army intelligence officer who had left the service after becoming disillusioned with the war. He now worked as a private investigator, helping soldiers who fell through the cracks. Sarah had met him years ago during a joint operation. He was one of the few people she trusted completely. Marcus opened the door before she knocked. "You look terrible," he said, pulling her inside quickly. He locked 3 separate deadbolts and led her through a cluttered living room to a back office. Computer monitors covered one wall, showing security camera feeds from around the neighborhood. "I need your help," Sarah said, dropping her backpack on the floor. She had not slept in 2 days. Her body was running on adrenaline and military discipline. I figured that when I saw your face on a classified watch list, Marcus replied. He poured 2 cups of strong coffee and handed her one. According to official channels, you went AWOL 3 weeks ago. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Desertion, theft of military property, and my personal favorite, suspected collaboration with enemy forces. Sarah felt her anger rising. They're trying to bury this. Make me look like a traitor so nobody questions what really happened. Marcus nodded. Tell me everything. Sarah spent the next hour explaining the ambush, the kill order, and her encounter with Reaper's team. She played Marcus, the recording of Brennan's phone call. When it finished, Marcus sat back in his chair and whistled softly. This is bigger than I thought, he said. Brennan's not working alone. You don't run an operation like this without serious backing. We're talking high-level corruption, probably involving defense contractors and maybe even politicians. Can you help me? Sarah asked. I can try, Marcus said. But you need to understand what you're up against. These people have money, power, and no conscience. They've already killed 17 soldiers to protect their secret. They won't hesitate to kill 17 more. I know, Sarah said. That's why I need to move fast, before they can cover their tracks completely. Marcus turned to his computers and started typing. The recording is good, but it's not enough. Defense lawyers will argue it was taken illegally, that it's been edited, that the voice analysis is flawed. You need more. You need documents, bank records, witness testimony. You need to build a case that's absolutely airtight. How do I do that? Sarah asked. Marcus pulled up a file on his main monitor. I've been tracking Brennan for the past 2 years. Nothing official, just personal curiosity. He always seemed too wealthy for someone on a colonel's salary. Look at this. The screen showed photographs of a large house in Virginia, expensive cars, and vacation photos from exotic locations. That's a $3 million home, Marcus said. On a salary of maybe $200,000 a year. Even with investments, the math doesn't work. Where's the money coming from? Sarah asked. That's what we need to find out, Marcus said. He opened another file. I've identified 3 shell companies that might be connected to the weapons trafficking operation. They're registered in the Cayman Islands, but they do business with defense contractors here. If we can prove Brennan has financial ties to these companies, we can start unraveling the whole network. Sarah leaned forward, studying the screen. How do we access those records? Marcus smiled. The old-fashioned way. We hack them. Over the next several days, Sarah and Marcus worked around the clock. Marcus used his considerable computer skills to breach the shell company's databases, while Sarah cross-referenced the information with her knowledge of military operations. They discovered a pattern. Every time Brennan's unit secured a weapons cache, a portion of those weapons disappeared from official records. Those same weapons later showed up in the inventories of warlords and militant groups. But the operation went deeper than simple theft. Brennan and his partners were deliberately creating instability in the region. They would arm different factions, then profit from the chaos by securing lucrative security contracts for American companies. It was a perfect cycle. Create the problem, then charge millions to solve it. This is insane, Sarah said, staring at the evidence displayed across multiple screens. They're prolonging the war for profit. And they're making a fortune doing it, Marcus added. I've tracked over $50 million moving through these accounts in the past 3 years. And that's probably just a fraction of the total. Sarah felt sick. While soldiers like her were risking their lives, officers like Brennan were treating the war like a business opportunity. The 17 members of her platoon had not died fighting for their country. They had died protecting a criminal enterprise. We need to get this to someone who can act on it, Sarah said. Someone outside the normal chain of command. Marcus nodded. I have a contact at the Inspector General's office, Colonel Patricia Hayes. She's investigating corruption in the procurement process. She's tough, honest, and she doesn't scare easily. Will she meet with us? Sarah asked. Not us, Marcus corrected. You. This needs to come from you. You're the witness, the one who saw it firsthand. I'm just the guy who helped connect the dots. Sarah understood. She was the credible witness, the decorated sharpshooter with 12 years of exemplary service. Her testimony would carry weight, "When can we arrange a meeting?" she asked. "Give me 24 hours, Marcus said. "Hayes is careful. She'll want to verify some of this information first, but once she sees what we have, she'll move fast." That night, Sarah tried to sleep, but couldn't. Her mind kept returning to the ambush, to the faces of her dead comrades. She thought about Private Johnson, only 19 years old, who used to show her pictures of his baby daughter. She thought about Sergeant Williams, who had saved her life during a firefight in Kandahar. She thought about Captain Rodriguez, who had recommended her for promotion just weeks before the attack. They were gone because of greed, because men like Brennan valued money more than lives. Sarah had spent her entire career defending her country, but she had never felt more patriotic than she did now, preparing to expose enemies within her own military. The next morning, Marcus received a response from Colonel Hayes. She would meet with Sarah, but only under strict conditions. The meeting would take place in a secure location. No weapons, no recording devices. Just Sarah, Hayes, and the evidence. "She's being careful," Marcus explained. "If word gets out that she's investigating Brennan, they'll shut her down before she can act. This has to stay quiet until she's ready to move." Sarah agreed to the terms. 2 days later, she found herself in a small restaurant on the outskirts of Kabul. The place was empty, except for the owner, who was clearly on Hayes's payroll. Sarah sat at a corner table, a thick folder of documents in front of her. Colonel Hayes arrived exactly on time. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore civilian clothes but carried herself with military bearing. She sat down across from Sarah without introducing herself. "You have 5 minutes to convince me this is worth my time," Hayes said. Sarah did not waste words. She laid out the evidence methodically, starting with the ambush and ending with the financial records. She played the recorded phone call. Hayes listened without interrupting, her expression never changing. When Sarah finished, Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You realize what you're asking me to do? Brennan has friends in very high places. If I go after him and fail, my career is over. Probably worse than that." 17 soldiers are dead, Sarah replied. "More will die if we do nothing. Isn't that worth the risk?" Hayes smiled grimly. "I've been investigating military corruption for 20 years. I've taken down generals, contractors, and career criminals in uniform. But this case is different. This goes right to the heart of how we conduct this war. If even half of what you're telling me is true, it's going to create a scandal that rocks the Pentagon." "So you'll help me?" Sarah asked. "I'll investigate," Hayes corrected. "I'll verify your evidence, interview witnesses, and build a case. But I need you to understand something. The moment I open this investigation officially, you become the key witness. That means you'll be protected, but it also means you can't disappear again. You'll need to cooperate fully, testify when required, and accept that your life will never be the same." Sarah had already accepted that. The moment she decided to fight back instead of run, she had crossed a line. There was no going back now. "I understand," she said. Hayes gathered up the documents. "I'll need 2 weeks to verify the financial records and line up additional evidence. Stay with your friend Chen. Don't contact anyone from your old unit. Don't make any moves against Brennan or his team. Let me handle this through proper channels." "What about the strike team?" Sarah asked. "They're still looking for me." "They'll keep looking," Hayes said. "But if they make a move in Kabul, they'll attract attention. The city is full of intelligence agencies, journalists, and contractors who ask questions. Brennan knows this. He'll probably pull them back and wait for another opportunity." Hayes stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. You're a hell of a soldier, Mitchell. What you've done took courage. Most people would have run, but you stayed and fought. Your platoon would be proud." After Hayes left, Sarah returned to Marcus's safe house. She felt exhausted but also relieved. For the first time in weeks, she was not alone in this fight. Hayes had the authority and resources to take on Brennan properly. But Sarah also knew the danger was not over. Brennan and his partners had too much to lose. They would do whatever it took to protect themselves. And if they discovered Hayes was investigating them, they would act quickly and ruthlessly. Sarah checked her rifle and made sure her gear was ready. She hoped Hayes could bring Brennan down through legal channels. But if that failed, Sarah had a backup plan. She was still a soldier. and soldiers did whatever was necessary to complete their mission. The attack came 9 days later, just before dawn. Sarah woke to the sound of breaking glass, and Marcus shouting a warning. She rolled off the couch where she had been sleeping and grabbed her rifle. Bullets tore through the walls, sending plaster and wood splinters flying through the air. "Back door!" Marcus yelled from somewhere in the smoke-filled room. Sarah could barely see him through the chaos. She fired 3 shots toward the front entrance, forcing the attackers to take cover, then sprinted toward the back of the house. Marcus was at the rear door, returning fire with a pistol. "They came in heavy," he said. "At least 8 shooters, maybe more. Professional gear." Sarah looked through a crack in the door. She could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions in the alley behind the house. They were surrounded. Brennan had found them. "We need to move now," Sarah said. She pulled a flashbang grenade from her vest and threw it into the alley. The explosion lit up the darkness, followed by confused shouting. Sarah and Marcus burst through the door, firing as they ran. A shooter appeared on the rooftop to their left. Sarah dropped him with a single shot without breaking stride. Marcus engaged 2 more targets at ground level, his shots precise despite the chaos. They reached the end of the alley and turned onto a wider street. A black SUV skidded around the corner, blocking their path. Doors flew open and 4 men jumped out, weapons raised. Sarah recognized the formation. These were Reaper's people. The strike team had found her again. She and Marcus dove behind a parked car as bullets hammered into the vehicle. Sarah could hear sirens in the distance. The Afghan police were responding to the gunfight, but they would not arrive in time. She needed to end this now. "Cover me," Sarah said to Marcus. Before he could respond, she was moving. She vaulted over the car and sprinted toward an abandoned building on the corner. Bullets chased her, sparking off the pavement and walls. She crashed through a broken door and raced up a narrow staircase. The building was 3 stories tall, giving her a clear view of the street below. Sarah positioned herself at a window and brought her rifle up. Through the scope, she could see the entire battlefield. Marcus was still pinned down behind the car. The strike team was advancing on his position in a coordinated assault. Sarah's breathing slowed. Her finger found the trigger. She picked her targets carefully. The first shot took down the team leader, a clean hit to the center mass. The second and third shots eliminated the flankers. The remaining shooters scattered, trying to identify where the fire was coming from. One of them spotted her position. He raised his weapon and fired a burst at her window. Sarah dropped below the sill as bullets shattered the glass above her head. She counted to 3, then popped back up and fired. The shooter went down. "Sarah, we have to go." Marcus's voice crackled through her radio. "Police are 2 minutes out. If they catch us here, Hayes can't protect you." Sarah fired 2 more shots to keep the remaining attackers suppressed, then ran for the stairs. She emerged from the building to find Marcus waiting with a motorcycle he had apparently stolen from nearby. Sarah jumped on the back and they roared away down the street, leaving the chaos behind them. They ditched the motorcycle 3 blocks away and disappeared into the crowded morning market. Sarah pulled a headscarf from her pack and wrapped it around her head, blending in with the local women. Marcus put on a traditional pakol hat and casual jacket. Within minutes, they looked like ordinary Afghans going about their morning business. "That was too close," Marcus said as they walked through the market stalls. "They tracked us somehow. Either they have someone inside Hayes' office or they've been monitoring communications." Sarah had been thinking the same thing. "We need to contact Hayes, warn her that Brennan knows about the investigation." "I'll send a message through a secure channel," Marcus said. "But we can't go back to the safe house. They'll have people watching it." They spent the day moving through the city, never staying in one place for more than an hour. Sarah's mind was racing. The attack meant Brennan was desperate. He knew the investigation was closing in on him, so he had thrown caution aside and ordered a direct assault. That was a mistake. The attack would create witnesses, evidence, and attention. Hayes could use all of that to build her case. Late that afternoon, Marcus received a response from Hayes. The message was brief and urgent. "Meeting compromised. Brennan knows. Moving up timeline. Need Mitchell at embassy tomorrow. 0800. Come alone. This is the only chance." Sarah read the message twice. Something felt wrong. Why the embassy? That's too exposed. Brennan has people everywhere. Marcus frowned. Hayes probably wants to get you into official custody before Brennan can make another move. Once you're inside the embassy, you'll be under diplomatic protection. Brennan can't touch you there. Maybe, Sarah said. But her instincts were screaming at her. She had survived 12 years of combat by trusting those instincts. Or maybe it's a trap. Maybe Brennan got to Hayes, threatened her family, offered her money. Something. Hayes is solid, Marcus insisted. I've known her for years. She wouldn't turn. Everyone has a breaking point, Sarah replied. She thought about it for a moment, then made a decision. I'll go to the meeting, but I'm doing it my way, and I need you to do something for me. The next morning, Sarah approached the U.S. Embassy from 3 blocks away. She was dressed in full military uniform, her ribbons and badges on display. She wanted everyone to see she was an American soldier, not a fugitive. If Brennan had people waiting inside, making a public scene would force them to be careful. She walked through the security checkpoints without incident. The Marine guards checked her ID and waved her through. So far, everything seemed normal. But Sarah kept her hand near her sidearm, ready for anything. Colonel Hayes was waiting in a small conference room on the 3rd floor. She stood when Sarah entered, her expression grim. Sergeant Mitchell, thank you for coming. Colonel, Sarah replied. She scanned the room quickly, empty, except for Hayes. No hidden cameras that she could see. 1 door in, 1 window facing the street. You said the investigation was compromised. Hayes nodded. Brennan knows I'm building a case against him. He's reached out to some of my superiors, calling it a witch hunt. He's claiming you're a disgruntled soldier making false accusations. He's very convincing. But you have the evidence, Sarah said. The financial records, the recording, everything. I do, Hayes said. But evidence needs to be verified, authenticated, and presented properly. Brennan's lawyers are already attacking the chain of custody. They're saying you obtained everything illegally, that you've tampered with records, that you're unstable after the trauma of losing your unit. Sarah felt her anger building. So he's going to get away with it? No, Hayes said firmly, but we need to be smart. I'm arranging a closed hearing with the Inspector General and representatives from the Department of Defense. You'll testify under oath, present your evidence, and answer their questions. It won't be easy. They'll challenge everything. But if you're credible and the evidence holds up, Brennan will face a court-martial. When? Sarah asked. 3 days, Hayes said. I need you to stay on the embassy grounds until then. You'll be safe here. Brennan can't touch you. Sarah studied Hayes carefully. The colonel seemed genuine, but something still felt off. Where's the hearing taking place? A secure facility near Bagram Air Base, Hayes said. We'll transport you there by military helicopter. Full security detail. That was when Sarah saw it. A tiny flicker in Hayes's eyes, a momentary tension in her shoulders. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Sarah had been reading people's body language for years. Hayes was lying about something. Sounds good, Sarah said, playing along. I'll stay here tonight. When do we leave for Bagram? 0600, day after tomorrow, Hayes said. She seemed relieved. There's a room prepared for you on the 4th floor. You'll have everything you need. Sarah left the conference room and took the elevator upstairs. A young Army private showed her to a small but comfortable room with a bed, desk, and private bathroom. Sarah thanked him and waited until he left. Then she went to the window and looked down at the street below. Marcus was there, sitting at a cafe across from the embassy. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, pretending to read a newspaper. When he saw Sarah at the window, he touched his ear. That was the signal. He had heard everything through the tiny microphones Sarah had been wearing. Sarah touched her ear in return, confirming she understood. Then she sat on the bed and started planning. Hayes was compromised, either through coercion or corruption. The meeting at Bagram was a trap. Brennan would never let her testify. He would have her killed during the transport, make it look like an accident or an enemy attack. That meant Sarah had to act first. She needed to force the confrontation on her terms, in a place where Brennan could not control the situation. And she had an idea of exactly how to do that. That night, Sarah waited until 0200, then quietly left her room. She had studied the embassy layout earlier, noting security camera positions and guard rotations. She moved through the building like a shadow, avoiding detection. Within 15 minutes, she was in the basement, accessing the embassy's secure communication system. She typed quickly, sending encrypted messages to 3 different addresses. The first went to a journalist at the Washington Post who specialized in military corruption. The second went to a senator Sarah had met during a ceremony at the White House, someone known for taking on the Defense Department. The third went to the commanding general of all U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Each message contained a summary of the evidence against Brennan, along with copies of the financial records and the recorded phone call. Sarah also included her own statement, explaining everything that had happened. She ended each message with a challenge. Colonel James Brennan has ordered the deaths of American soldiers to protect a criminal weapons trafficking operation. If no action is taken within 48 hours, I will hold a press conference and release all evidence to the public. It was a gamble. Going public would destroy any chance of a quiet resolution. But Sarah was done playing by rules that only protected criminals. If the system would not deliver justice, she would force it to. She returned to her room and waited. Morning came. At 0600, Colonel Hayes knocked on her door. "Change of plans," Hayes said. "We're moving you to Bagram today instead of tomorrow. New security concerns." Sarah pretended to be surprised. "What kind of concerns?" "Brennan knows you're here," Hayes said. "We intercepted communications. He's planning something. We need to move you now while we still have the advantage." Sarah nodded and gathered her gear. As she followed Hayes through the embassy corridors, she noticed the increased security. More guards, more tension. Everyone was on edge. Good. That meant her messages had reached their targets. They reached the roof where a Black Hawk helicopter was warming up. Hayes gestured for Sarah to board. "The hearing has been moved forward. You'll testify this afternoon. Everything's been arranged." Sarah climbed into the helicopter but left her gear at the door. Hayes looked at her questioningly. "What's wrong?" "Everything," Sarah said. She pulled out her phone and held it up. On the screen was an email confirmation from the Washington Post. "I sent the evidence to the press, to Congress, and to the theater commander. By now, probably 50 people have seen Brennan's crimes. You can't kill me and cover this up. It's too late." Hayes's expression changed. The mask of the concerned officer fell away, replaced by cold calculation. "You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've done my duty," Sarah replied. "Something you forgot how to do." Hayes reached for her sidearm. Sarah was faster. She swept the colonel's legs out from under her and pinned her to the helicopter floor. Within seconds, she had Hayes disarmed and in handcuffs. The flight crew watched in shock. "Radio the embassy security," Sarah told them. "Tell them Colonel Hayes is under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, and tell them to send MPs to Colonel Brennan's quarters immediately." The pilot hesitated. Sarah pulled out her phone again and showed him the message from the commanding general. It was brief. "Sergeant Mitchell's allegations are being investigated at the highest level. All personnel will cooperate fully. Any interference will be considered obstruction of justice." The pilot nodded and made the call. Within minutes, the embassy erupted into controlled chaos. Military police swarmed the building. Officers who had been loyal to Brennan suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. The conspiracy was unraveling. Sarah rode the elevator back down to ground level, still holding Hayes in custody. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, having talked his way past security with the help of some well-placed bribes and his knowledge of embassy procedures. "Is it done?" he asked. "Almost," Sarah said. 3 hours later, Colonel James Brennan was arrested at Bagram Air Base. He had been trying to flee the country on a private contractor flight. In his possession were multiple fake passports and nearly $2 million in cash. When confronted with the evidence, he denied everything. But his denials rang hollow against the mountain of documents, recordings, and witness statements. The investigation that followed exposed the full scope of the corruption. 17 officers were eventually court-martialed. Dozens of defense contractors lost their government contracts. The weapons trafficking network was dismantled. It was the biggest military scandal since the Vietnam War. Sarah testified at the hearings, spending 3 grueling days answering questions and reliving the ambush that killed her platoon. It was hard, but it was necessary. The families of the fallen soldiers deserved to know the truth. They deserved to know their loved ones had not died for nothing. When it was over, Sarah received a commendation for her actions. The army offered her a promotion and a position at the Pentagon. She declined. She had seen enough of how power corrupted institutions. Instead, she asked for a transfer to Training Command. She wanted to teach the next generation of soldiers, instill in them the values that really mattered: honor, courage, integrity. 6 months after Brennan's arrest, Sarah received a letter from Private Johnson's widow. She thanked Sarah for not letting the truth be buried. She said knowing what really happened gave her closure. Her daughter would grow up knowing her father died a hero, not just another casualty of a distant war. Sarah kept that letter in her footlocker. On difficult days, when she doubted whether any of it had been worth it, she would read it again. It reminded her why she had become a soldier in the first place. Not for glory or adventure, but to protect people who could not protect themselves, to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. She had spent weeks being hunted by a strike team that thought she was easy prey. They had underestimated her, assumed that one soldier alone could not stand against them. They had been wrong. Sarah Mitchell had not just survived, she had turned the tables completely, transforming from hunted to hunter. She had exposed corruption at the highest levels and brought justice to those who thought they were untouchable. The strike team had asked the wrong question. They had asked, "Where is she?" when they should have been asking, "Who is hunting who?" Because in the end, Sarah had been hunting them the entire time, gathering evidence, building her case, and preparing for the moment when she could strike back. She had used their arrogance against them, let them think they had the advantage while she steadily tightened the noose. Now, standing in front of a new class of recruits at Fort Benning, Sarah told them a simple truth. The most dangerous weapon on any battlefield is not a rifle or a bomb. It is a soldier who knows what they are fighting for and refuses to compromise. That soldier is unstoppable. She looked at the young faces staring back at her, saw the determination and idealism she once had. She hoped they would never face what she had faced. But if they did, she hoped they would remember her story. She hoped they would have the courage to do the right thing, no matter the cost, because that was what being a soldier really meant. Not following orders blindly, but standing up for what was right, even when everyone else stood against you. Especially then.